Every honeymoon comes to an end. In every marriage, feelings of excitement and infatuation, that being head over heels for each other, that fades as the other person honestly starts to seem ordinary. And as we've observed before, a lot of husbands and wives, when the new wears off, they begin to think they aren't right for each other. And maybe they go off in search of a new source of excitement. Sadly, that is that is the reality all too often. And this misunderstanding, it hurts a lot of marriages. According to science, feelings of infatuation for a given person last 2 years at the most for any one person. Troubled marriages are very often caused by a lack of understanding. But our chances of joy and fulfillment in marriage go way up. They increase as we grow in understanding. That's why there are marriage enrichment classes. Our chances for success in marriage grow as we learn more about being a good spouse. Now, there are a lot of possessions that quickly turn to obsolete clutter and wind up in our storage buildings or broken in the dump. But wisdom is well worth the effort to acquire, and wisdom doesn't depreciate in value. That's why Solomon says in Proverbs 4 verse 5, he instructs us to get wisdom, to get insight. He says, don't forget, don't turn away from the words of my mouth. Don't forsake her, and she'll keep you. Love her, and she'll guard you. So, let's seek knowledge, let's seek wisdom, let's seek understanding that will increase our joy in marriage, that will increase our joy in any relationship, quite honestly. We know that marriage is supposed to be based on love, but our ideas about love can be naive. Now, Greek is the language of the New Testament, and there are several Greek words that are translated into English as love. There's eros, physical love, which is a very important component of happy marriages. Genesis 2 verse 24, Moses writes that a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. There's physical intimacy there. We know Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 7 that spouses are to care for each other's physical needs. We know that marriage is the only appropriate context for the physical relationship, but physical love alone won't make a marriage work. There's also phileo. That's another Greek word that is translated into English as love. There's phileo, the love of friendship. The love of friendship, the love of companionship is definitely a very important component of happy marriages. Now, our spouses won't be our only friends, but they should be our best friends. Spouses should like each other, but sometimes feelings of friendship waver in a marriage. Sometimes you want to duke it out. Sometimes you're furious at each other. And so marriages need a stronger foundation than either physical passion or friendship alone. At their foundation, marriages need agape love. And agape love it transcends feelings. It is a decision, a firm decision to be committed to the well-being of another person, even when that person displeases us, by the way. And agape love is God's love for us. Paul shows us that in Romans 5 verse 8 and says, but God shows his love for us, his agape for us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were doing the things that hurt him, that displeased him, God sent his son to pay the ultimate price to have us in heaven with him. That's about as unconditional as love gets. Agape love makes a marriage strong. We see God's agape love for us through what he does, through his actions toward us. Agape love is as agape love does. And agape love consists of actions that truly benefit the people in our lives. So what are the actions? What are the behaviors of agape love? Well, as we've made reference to in prior lessons, in 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 8, some of the most beautiful words in the Bible, Paul passes, I've used this illustration before, but Paul passes agape love through a prism, splits it into its colors, splits it into its component behaviors. And so let's read together Paul's words, Paul's breakdown of love in 1 Corinthians 13, beginning in verse 4. Paul says, love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things. Love believes all things. Love hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Now, agape love is the greatest thing of all. If you think about it, the Bible tells us this in 1 John 4, verse 8. John writes that God is love, agape love. God and agape love, he's the source of agape love. The Bible's most important commandments are to have agape love for God and agape love for each other. Matthew 22, 37 through 40. Paul says that in Colossians 3:14 that agape love binds everything else together in perfect harmony. When you crown your other virtues with agape love, everything comes together and it just works. On the other hand, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 through 3, that without agape love, we are nothing and we gain nothing. Doesn't matter what else we do. We don't have love, it's in vain. So for the sake of our marriages, for the sake of all our relationships, let's get a better understanding of what agape love is as we go back through our primary passage in 1 Corinthians 13. The first thing we'll notice is that love is patient. Another way of saying it is that love suffers long, love bears with others when they're difficult. Now, you think about it, even the most glamorous people that we can imagine, Hollywood icons, and we think, wow, to just spend a moment in that person's presence would be amazing. These people marry each other, and the amazing thing is how quickly those marriages end, because even these glamorous people have their flaws, and you have to bear with those people after a while, and people aren't willing to do it, and so they part ways. But we've got to bear with each other. Now, we've got to suffer through the shortcomings of others. Your suffering is not more important to you than the person you love, even when that person causes you great pain. Now, it sounds like a drag till you turn it around, because we certainly want others to be patient with us, and so we need to extend the patience that we want to receive. Now, how much you're willing to suffer, you got to watch that with great care. Allowing yourself to be abused, it's not in your best interest. It's also not in the best interest of the one abusing you. And so preventing and ending abuse in a spirit of love is an important matter that might require outside help. But love is patient, it's long-suffering, and love is kind. Love has a gentle generosity of spirit. Love is generous with time, with encouragement, with praise, with expression of appreciation, with gratitude. In marriages, you want your marriage to work, be your spouse's best friend, be your spouse's biggest cheerleader, be your spouse's most diehard admirer and fan. Love is kind. Love, next of all, love does not envy, it's not jealous. Now, of course, we know that marriage is an exclusive relationship in many ways. That's why the writer of Hebrews says, let the marriage bed be held in honor among all. Let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and the adulterous. That being true, however, love is not so possessive that it dominates a person without regard for his or her well-being. Out of suspicion or a desire for control, we must not extinguish the other person. Our spouses must be allowed to use their gifts, pursue their interests to the glory of God. We must not be jealous of our spouses. Rather, we should live vicariously through them and celebrate their accomplishments as if they're our own. Our spouses must be allowed to have healthy friendships with other people. Love is not jealous. Love is not boastful. Boastful language speaks constantly of I and me and my. Boastful language is the language of insecurity. A boastful person is constantly seeking approval. Now, yes, we have an inherent need for admiration, but we're not constant approval seekers, even sometimes at the expense of our spouse. A secure person with a mature concern for the well-being of the other mate can talk about you and yours and ours. The spotlight doesn't always have to be on you. Love is not boastful. Love is not arrogant. Proverbs 8:13, Solomon writes that the fear of the Lord is the hatred of evil, but that pride and arrogance in the way of evil and perverted speech I hate. Pride is not a healthy self-esteem, but making yourself your greatest love, more so than your love for God, more so than your love for others. Pride puts yourself first before God or other people. The greatest commandments instruct us to put God and others before ourselves, to love God with all of our hearts, to love our neighbors as ourselves. And so pride is essentially the opposite of godly behavior. And in a healthy marriage, each person acknowledges the great value and importance of the other. Love is not prideful. Love is not rude. Rudeness, now, we may wink at rudeness sometimes, and but it gets old fast. Rudeness despises and tears down people, and eventually rudeness destroys people. Love, on the other hand, is courteous. Love seeks to build up and instill confidence in the other person. Now, I'm sad to say, preachers sometimes run their wives down from the pulpit. We shouldn't do this. That's a bad move. Never badmouth your spouse in front of others. Saying it's a joke, by the way, doesn't make this behavior any less damaging to your relationship. And so Paul says in Ephesians 4:29, he says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. Love is not rude. Love is not self-seeking. Love is not selfish. Self-seeking has no interest in serving. Self-seeking is concerned with my priorities at the expense of yours. Self-seeking often manifests itself, moreover, in areas such as finances and discretionary time. Love, on the other hand, is characterized by charity, by selflessness. Make the welfare of your spouse a top priority as you allocate your time, your energy, your finances, your other resources. Make sure you've met your spouse's needs before putting resources into lower priority investments. Give your spouse a chance to have guilt-free breaks and times of refreshment. Don't spend the grocery money on lottery tickets and alcohol. 1 Timothy 5 verse 8, Paul says, if anyone, and by the way, it's a really big deal. Paul says, if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for the members of his own household, he's denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Love is not self-centered. Love is not irritable. Love doesn't respond to hurts in a destructive way. It doesn't fly off the handle, but love makes peace. It doesn't escalate conflict. Love is not resentful. Love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Love doesn't dig up the past. Rather, it forgives and it moves on. It gives the other person a chance to turn over a new leaf. You can forget your shortcomings when you've overcome them. Love doesn't rejoice at wrongdoing. Now, it's easy to imagine evil motives in others. The next step then is to look for evil in others. And when you start expecting and searching for evil in others, it's an easy step to start rejoicing when you find it. But love doesn't do this. Rather, love rejoices in the truth. Love wants to believe the best about others. Love wants to believe the best about one's spouse. Love attributes the best possible motives to the actions of one's spouse. In fact, it's been said that one of the characteristics of healthy marriages is a pattern, a practice, a habit of making charitable explanations for the behavior of others. Love seeks to trust. Love bears all things. Love believes all things. Hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Love keeps on keeping on. Love endures. Love never fails. My dad's parents were married for 75 years. My granddaddy Burton said that's a long time to sit by the same woman at church. Revelation 2 verse 10, the words of Jesus to the Christians in Smyrna are they're good marriage counsel. He says, be faithful unto death. Then he says, and I'll give you the crown of life. For healthy marriages, make a firm commitment to love each other through your actions. And the best way to do this in any relationship is to be like Jesus. And that's why Jesus says in John 13:34, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another.